You are sent back to the day the Titanic set sail with nothing but a third-class ticket, and food water etc. Your task is to stop the Titanic from sinking. How do you do this? You have to get them to change course or slow way the duck down at some point before impact. As a third-class passenger, the fastest and most surefire way to do this is 10 minutes before impact to chuck someone over the railing and call out a man overboard. The ship turns around for them, or at least takes all way off and drops a rescue boat, and the iceberg floats on by. If after all that and the ship gets back on course the iceberg is still in the way, at least the ship doesn't hit it at ludicrous speed. I love how this involves actually throwing a man overboard as opposed to just yelling man overboard. Pretty much this. All you need to do is slightly change where the ship was at the time of the collision. It was an incredible coincidence in the first place. You could do this anytime, maybe bump the captain with a bucket of paint so he has to get changed before they leave port. Maybe find a way to turn the ship around and waste some time, maybe find a way to angle the ship a few fractions of a degree off course so they need to course correct at a later stage. The butterfly effect is a powerful thing. The second officer, ranked just below the captain, for the ship was replaced right before the ship left the harbor. This was the guy with keys to the storage room where the binoculars were stored. So on the fateful evening the watch crew could only see as far as the naked eye would allow, hence not enough time to adjust course once they spotted the iceberg. So I'd get that second officer to hand off the keys to the next guy in charge. I'd also stay in London because you never know. If I had to stop the Titanic from killing all of those people, my first thought is to stop it from setting sail. I setting a fire or even bomb the ship. I know it sounds drastic, but nobody with a third-class ticket had power to save it unless they take drastic measures. I feel like 90% of the things that you would try once on board would land you in the brig. A pretty crappy place to be on a ship that you know is going to sink. Probably the most serious response so far. I appreciate you not telling me you were going to shove the Titanic up your ass. Oh, that was the plan. If rational thinking fails, they'd probably turn the ship around if I keep running around trying to butt duck everything in sight and say I can't control myself and spread rumors about a fake virus that makes you do so. And you ducked it up again, thanks. Well, you did bait him with your reply. Some say you are quite the master baiter. The radio head, if I remember, refused to notify the bridge as he was incensed by the conversation he had to get those reports. You see, the passengers were allowed to submit letter to the telegraph room to submit back home or to New York, and normally the telegraph crew would do these later at night when there wasn't as much danger to the ship. So that night when he was doing his rounds of Morse coding some family messages to New York, another ship's Morse coder proceeded to interrupt his signal trying to pass on the information that they had passed a 13 to 15 icebergs that were headed towards them. However, the telegrapher that night kept trying to ignore him as he had important work to do, yet the other guy kept transmitting his response. In the end, the man who was in that room never wrote down the iceberg report and thus never reported it. I, being a third-class ticket, would probably not be able to do anything. However, if I speak English, I would ask the first-class ticket holders if we could slow the ship down for a gentle cruise. The Titanic's speed was one of the many reasons it wasn't able to avoid the iceberg. A slower ship would probably be able to get much more distance between the hull and the iceberg. Dr. Morse coder got angry, didn't submit report in anger. Yet assuming none of my warnings were heeded, I'd knock the guy out and let the thing hit it head on. A big reason it sunk was because the iceberg ran along the side of the boat, ripping open multiple sections of the hull. Might have had a fighting chance had it just damaged the front portion. Wasn't this the plot of a 90s PC game? There was something about Serbia and Turkish baths and a notebook. I feel like I'm describing a dream. Also, one of the endings has you taking a painting off the ship, which turns out to be a painting by Hitler and leads him to becoming a successful painter instead of the other thing. You had to fix several things to get the good ending. Apart from the painting, you also had to secure a notebook that would otherwise get Archduke Ferdinand killed. And there were probably more. Maybe some jewelry. To be honest, I've forgotten. Get the fucking binoculars. Funny story, there were binoculars on the Titanic, but at the time they were incredibly valuable, so much do that they were kept in a locked strongbox when not in use. The guy with the key to the binoculars was transferred off the Titanic a week before its maiden voyage, and he mistakenly took the keys with him. Did he get in any trouble for walking off the ship with the keys? Well, at least he didn't die. Ultimate year-end bonus. I read a choose-your-own-adventure Titanic book when I was younger. If I remember correctly, the early ending choice was to use your binoculars to point out the iceberg and to convince the captain to divert the ship. So that. Do you turn your third-class tickets or your food into binoculars? Titanic tickets were highly sought after, so you'd just trade your ticket for a pair of binoculars. I sit. I wait. 3 minutes and 24 seconds before anticipated collision, I hand the string quartet 4 pages of sheet music and they play. The guests will hear, for the first time, My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. I tell them that their deaths will bring about the most beautiful song ever written. As confusion sets into the crowd, the song crescendos to the apex exactly as collision takes place. I survive because I pushed some bimbo off a floating door who wouldn't even share it with her boyfriend. Claim there's a bomb or a murder on the ship to prevent it from setting sail in the first place. Judging by the fact that you are in third class, if they would listen, great idea though. If they don't listen, I'll murder them out of spite. Just to prove a point. First I would save a sexy first-class passenger from committing suicide, then I would draw said first-class passenger naked, after that we would have steamy hot sex in the back of someone else's wagon. Later that night I would go and speak to the captain dressed up as if I was a first-class passenger and bribe him with the drawing of the sexy first-class passenger and a sniff of my fingers to steer the ship 2 degrees south on our voyage. Boom. Disaster averted. I go back and find my sexy first-class passenger. We have sex all over the ship until we reach port in New York City. She finds out she's pregnant and we live happily ever after with a huge diamond necklace. I'd trade some of my food for a paper clip. I'd then trade the paper clip all the way up to a house. Once I had the house, I'd sell it and buy a shit ton of paper clips. I'd trade these up to houses and sell those houses to buy more paper clips. Eventually I'd have enough money to buy the Titanic. I'd order the captain to change course and save the ship. Then I'd sell the Titanic and buy a paper clip. If I had time to prepare before I'm sent back, I'd study every single detail of every passenger and crew member and pass myself off as a psychic. Using that information I'd convince everyone the ship is headed for disaster, forcing the captain to avoid the fatal icebug. When we arrive safely, everyone will either be convinced I'm a fraud or their savior. Unfortunately, you would have had to be a crew member, because the Californian was not carrying any passengers on that particular voyage. It mostly did cargo runs, had the capacity to carry a small number of passengers as well, but wasn't carrying any for that trip. Take back a DVD player and a TV and a copy of Titanic, and wow the captain with my magical technology from the future. Bad idea. The crew will argue whether or not there was room for Jack on the floating debris. The crew, distracted by the argument, won't have time to avoid the iceberg. Well, chances are pretty high that the authorities wouldn't listen to some crazy third-class woman, so I would spend the last couple days quietly gathering wood, nails, and hammers so as to create enough lifeboats for everyone to get off. Alright, that probably wouldn't work for so many reasons, but I tried. Okay. Ma'am, what on God's good earth are you doing? You've already ripped out several halls of paneling and torn apart multiple large furniture items. There's even reports of you raiding the maintenance rooms. I'm trying to help you all avoid a future you cannot know about. And what future is that? Gives detailed account of the sinking. Ma'am, I'm afraid I have to confiscate these items from you. Repo CC's the wood, nails, glue and hammer. Makes a note to tell other crew about the crazy story over dinner.